for it, ride for it. I'ma organize for it. Stay up in the night and in the morning I'ma rise for it. Heart for it, mind for it, ears for it, eyes for it. Peace in the place on this earth for me and mine for it. Work for it, ride for it. I'ma organize for it. Stay up in the night and in the morning I'ma rise for it. Heart for it, mind for it, ears for it, eyes for it. Peace in the place on this earth for me and mine for it.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the Money, Power, Land, Solidarity podcast. We are here today, really lucky to be joined by and excited to be joined by our comrades from St. Paul, from Midway Rise Up. We're going to be talking about some contentious development issues in the Midway, Frogtown, St. Paul, University Avenue corridor. So to get us started with, could I just ask folks to introduce themselves? Maybe we'll start with Danielle and go from there.
For sure. My name is Danielle Swift, and I'm a community organizer at the Frogtown Neighborhood Association by trade, but I organize where I fit in on both sides of the river, mostly around development and housing. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you.
So, hi, good evening. I'm Isabel Chanslor, and I've lived in the Twin Cities for the last 29 years, California born. U.S. Army veteran, came here to the Twin Cities and started to raise my family, and been in the nonprofit organizing realm, either in housing or education, and then became part of philanthropy. I was a program officer for about 6 years. Been running it, around in different nonprofits in different positions, but the majority of my work has been around supporting small business, being a part of development projects and advocacy. So that's kind of where this has all kind of led me to and why we're talking about this project today.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Sarah, I think it'd be great if you introduce yourself as well.
Awesome. My name is Sarah Nichols. I was raised in the Midway, longtime resident in this area. I actually just moved out because I couldn't find an affordable home to purchase in Frogtown and Midway. So I bought my house in Rondo 10 years ago, and I couldn't afford to buy in Midway, which is where I wanted to be because that's where I'm closest to family. And now here I am 10 years later, and I can't afford in Rondo and I can't afford in Frogtown. So I'm over here on the east side now. But I'm part of the Victoria Theater Arts Center, and I am now organizing with Midway Rise Up. And I just care a ton about the businesses. I don't own a business myself, but I have close relationships with a lot of those businesses along University Avenue. And I feel like the fabric of our community rests heavily on the businesses that exist along University Avenue. And so I consider myself an activist for keeping I want to see the community and the businesses stay strong and work together. So that's how I'm tied into this.
I really appreciate you all coming on the show. I want to first ask a question about Midway Rise Up and this moment when y'all came together after the uprisings in the early summer. Could you talk about that? What was that? What were those weeks like? And I guess before I ask that question, though, I want to just set a context. We have mostly a local listenership who's tuned into some of these issues and has a sense. But for folks who are tuning in from outside of Minnesota, what we're talking about is working class areas in St. Paul, areas that are, historically a lot of Black people, a lot of immigrants, Asian people, rich, multiracial working class communities in St. Paul that have been divested from and are experiencing the gentrification pressures, much like Northeast Minneapolis has experienced, parts of South Minneapolis has experienced, or this show, we're talking about the Upper Harbor Terminal, North Minneapolis. There's so much private capital ready to move in and move people out. So that was the context before this summer. From my understanding, there was already a lot of struggle around gentrification, resisting gentrification happening all the way down University Avenue from Frogtown, Rondo, all the way up through the Midway, Hamlin Midway area. So that's just the context. So go from there, So what was that like then after the uprisings hit this summer, and how did Midway rise up for him?
Yeah, this is Isabel, and I would really like to just pay respects to the fact that, we are on Lakota Dakota land,
Yes.
primarily, first off. Secondly, we're talking about an area where we lost a beautiful, rich, financially sound, healthy community, an African American community that was really solid from the late 1880s to all the way into the 1960s. And it was devastated by a development, an interstate, I-94, which is a story that plays out everywhere you go. Houston, New Orleans, Oakland, you name it, it's happened. And it all happened around the same decade. So I want to that's the context. So for about 60, 70 years, University Avenue, which connects two universities in two different cities, the Twin Cities, was really left to immigrant communities, whoever was left in the African American community. It was really kind of where everybody came to live in the city core that wasn't really welcomed anywhere else and really didn't want to live anywhere else, right? This was like where we wanted to be as people. And so there's a lot of property that for those many, many decades that were owned by local families. And they had strongholds on those properties. And the property value, when I moved here in 91 in Frogtown, you could buy a house for $8,000.
Wow.
1991. We're not talking about 1810. We're talking about 1991. You try to buy a house now for under $250 in Frogtown, you're not going to find it. So 28 years since I've been here, I've seen the devastation. And I've seen organizations really, really trying to fight the hard fight with not a lot of support. And we're tired of it. And so when COVID occurred, there were many activists in the community across the Twin Cities, much like everywhere else in the country and in the world, that were trying to find ways to support people of color, knowing that people of color were unfortunately being hit the hardest by COVID, and trying to get masks out there and sanitizer and education and encouraging people to, social distance and stay home and take care of your elders. And then we had the murder of George Floyd by the police. That we all saw, in full live color, unfortunately. And we had an uprising. And that uprising caused damage all across the Twin Cities, North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, and St. Paul, especially around the University Snelling area. If anybody knows that area, it's University Avenue and Snelling. And that intersection in St. Paul is the busiest cross street in the whole state of Minnesota. There's just a lot of activity there. And so this uprising occurred, and all of a sudden we had to kick it into high gear. And we already were organizing across different things with one another, but quite honestly, we were still working in our own ways to address community. And some of us started to kind of coalesce around each other because it was weeks and weeks of intense work trying to get food into local communities because stores were closed, trying to get gasoline, trying to get businesses covered with plywood. And that was all done by individuals, and not that many organizations or institutions were around on the ground when they were needed. So that pissed us off. And then came the fact that 2 weeks after the uprising, all of a sudden, Midway Shopping Center gets gated up. And all of a sudden, we're hearing that the tenants that have been there for some of them almost 30 years were getting evicted by July, and actually by June. And we were like, what? Like 10% of the building had experienced a fire, but it didn't burn down. And we're talking a massive building. I mean, I can't remember the acreage right now, but it's huge. 10% of the building.
Which building is it? I'm trying to think of like picture it in my mind. Can you kind of like orient us on that corner, which building it is?
So Midtown Shopping Center is you have Little Caesars Pizza, you have the Foot Locker, the GameStop. Everybody knows where the GameStop is. It's been there forever.
There used to be a bowling alley in the basement.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
There used to be a Perkins, like on the front side there. There's a McDonald's there.
It's like the cluster of buildings or the buildings that's closer to university, where like now the soccer stadium is like farther back and where the liquor store and stuff used to be, but this is like closer.
Right.
So you're talking about this building sustained 10% fire damage, really one unit in the building, could have been rebuilt. It's structurally sound. And all of a sudden fences go up and they're telling the tenants now that they got to go and the building's going to be demolished.
The tenants met with the city Department of Safety and Inspections the day after the uprising. And they did this process where all the spaces were inspected, and then each unit got a little card, and the card was either red, you can't come in here, or yellow, you have a few things to do, but you're all going to be operational in no time as long as you do these three things on the checklist. And then there was green, right, which was like, hey, all you had like was a little water damage, you're good, like dry it up and you can start operating. And then about few days, business days later, all of a sudden they're told that the building is just, it's not, you can't occupy it. And the permits were pulled by the city, the gates were put up by the property owner, and man, we smell like some really rotten fish. And so then we got together and created Chantal Allen, who's a school board member now and a Twin Cities Black Lives Matter founder, was like, oh, hell no. Like we need to do something. So let's get together. And we created this group, which we eventually called ourselves Midway Rise Up. And so Midway Rise Up has found attorneys for those tenants, and that work is happening, and we're supporting that work.
Hell yeah.
Tenants. We don't know how far this is going to go, but we are also have been alarmed about another property that people are prospecting about that are probably going to evict 4 longtime African American businesses that have been in the community all together side by side for 30 years now.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's urban roots all the way to ultimate look.
That's like, is that on the other side of university?
The other side of university.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's, wow.
Yep. Can I throw just a little bit of narrative in here too, to add on to what Isabel's talking about that time period? So the morning that we heard folks were coming to St. Paul, right? Because this uprising had been happening a little bit in Minneapolis, right? And now we heard it was coming to St. Paul. That's when Chantal Allen put out a message on Facebook, like, we need signs. We need Black-owned business signs, right? So I woke up my son, and my son's name is Sai Vang. He's a designer. I said, hey, we need to make signs. He got up, he made those signs. I don't know, they saw them all over the Twin Cities. It said like Black-owned business, and it had a little fist on it. And then he made some that said community-owned business with a little fist. And I heard they were that folks were at Target, and I ran over to Urban Lights, and there was Isabel, and we had never met each other. And I ran over there and we connected with each other, and then we just started plastering those up, and we were sharing that. And we didn't know what we could do, but we wanted to do anything that we could because we are in 100% support of the uprising, 100% support of what's happening, but there are so many Black-owned businesses that we wanted to see, is there a way we can protect people? So then when we found out about those businesses that were going to be kicked out, that were being kicked out by their owner of the building. So that's how Isabel and I got connected over this pivotal moment in the city. And we knew right away that there were developers that were ready to prey on what had happened. We knew that all these small Black and Asian owned businesses were about to be preyed on by developers. And I also want to honor the work that Danielle and FNA has done, because the only reason I know anything about development, the only reason I know anything about what is happening in the community is that development without displacement work that the folks at FNA have been doing for years. And so this is like a beautiful union of people who have been doing this deep work with like racial justice work in the community, and then people who are working with small businesses, and then folks who are just doing like community development and that kind of work like Danielle. So thanks.
Yeah, over the years, I've learned a lot from the Frogtown Neighborhood Association, from Tia, from Katie, from Danielle, and like to see that long-term work, there was people organizing against this capitalist aggression of like these big money of investors who want to come flip properties. And then to hear that kind of infrastructure also was able to connect with this movement that Isabel's describing in terms of, Isabel, I was really resonating with the story you told about your COVID experience in the neighborhood, because I had a lot of the same experiences where it was people organizing in new ways, providing direct solidarity, mutual aid, really on the ground, and really recognizing that some of the institutions that kind of pulled out, or it showed like that you might be strong in a boardroom, but you're really not strong on the ground. And really we have to organize at a neighborhood level. But it sounds like this connection in terms of like that policy work and community organizing being done at FNA and other groups, and then this, active, real community leaders who are building on the ground, able to link up together. That's a powerful situation.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother podcast when we talk
I
about
swear.
when we talk about the institutional kind of like setup that we're here in Minnesota, where we're one of the richest states in the country.
Come on.
And we have some of like what we have 10,000 lakes and 100,000 nonprofits, and some of them are so huge that the people are making 400, 500, sometimes close to $1 million a year. And you're running a nonprofit. And where was the Red Cross? Where was, United Way? Where was, Habitat for Humanity? I mean, the list can go on. I know where everybody was. I saw Danielle posting every day saying, hey, come and get food here at this time, at this place, which, we need volunteers. And it was only the people. And so we have gone to foundations and said, hey, you're funding the wrong people. So that's a whole nother conversation.
I'd love to have that conversation with you one day, because you just lit me up. I've been saying that exact same thing for years. I noted in your introduction, I've also worked in nonprofits my whole adult life, and I actually I was suspended for organizing work I was doing by my nonprofit, and ended up leaving the job this fall. And it was kind of like a lot of these tensions coming together. So that really resonates with me, and I'd love to talk more about that with you. I want to kind of keep us going. So we talked about Midway Rise Up, this powerful formation that came out of the post-uprising COVID milieu, a network of people who want to organize to maintain and build community wealth, Black power, brown power, working class solidarity. That brings us to another development in the neighborhood, Lexington Station. So when, shout out to homie Matt Jarvie connected us, he was the main issue he rose to my attention was this proposed development on Lexington and Snelling. Can you talk about that? Like what's happening there, what's proposed there, and what is Midway Rise Up's take on that development?
Well, I want Danielle to start, and we're bigger than this effort's way bigger than Midway Rise Up, way bigger, way more organizations have been around, been working on this issue for about a year and a half before we even knew what the heck was going on. And so I think it's just, indicative of how many of us are asleep at the wheel, even activists that are asleep at the wheel, literally, or purposely not getting the information. Nobody thinks this is news. And so it's really hard to get this information. If it wasn't for people like Danielle and organizations like her district council that pay a person to work on this in the community, it would have already happened without our notice. So Danielle.
Thanks, y'all. I was trying to think back of how this even first came to our attention. And I can't even say that I remember exactly what it was that it was like, here's this thing, because it's not something that is front page news. It's not something that is widely known. The thing about development is that lots of times it's happening in the works, sometimes 10, 15 plus years before you actually start to see things like a site plan or get any type of engagement at all. And so when we learned about this, I remember it was at the Union Park Planning Council, or their board meeting, their CLUID meeting, their land use. And so this developer was going to get basically approval or to let them know that this was happening in their neighborhood. So the interesting thing about this development is that it's at a very prominent intersection, but it's also where 4 district councils meet. So we've got the Summit University neighborhood, Union Park, Hamlin Midway, and Frogtown.
So that's what y'all call neighborhood associations in Minneapolis. It's called a district council.
Absolutely. So
Learning
where it's in
new.
Yeah, in Minneapolis, y'all have 84 neighborhoods, right? In St. Paul, we only have 17, and 4 of them meet at this intersection.
Okay. And that's Lexington, and that's across 94 from Central High School, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So at that ramp, there's a Super America, a BP gas station, Central, and then you got Jimmy Lee that's on the other corner. Right. So we're talking about the side closest to University.
Minnesota youth sports legends. Jimmy Lee was kicking ass in every sport.
Shout out to Jimmy Lee. My son didn't play for them. We've lost to them, though. I'm going to be honest about it. We've definitely.
Well, we won. When my son was playing against Jimmy Lee, we won. Frogtown won. So thank you.
Okay, nice. All I know is we only got to play St. Paul teams if we won the championship. You know what I'm saying? Minneapolis Park Boys. So I think I only played against one St. Paul team.
Okay, shout out to the youth sports, for real. So, this is at this intersection. The interesting thing is that, these borders that are created, it's a hella white, even way of thinking about things, as if they say this is where one neighborhood starts and another one begins, that can differentiate what's going to happen in the real estate market, for example. So Union Park happens to be a district that, I think if we were looking at it from an income standpoint, there may be a little bit more money that's going in through income, through Union Park, you know what I mean, versus Frogtown or from Summit U. And we see that. So where this development, people over there, they might not care so much as we would in Frogtown, where our average or the area median income is more as 30 grand, you know what I mean? And that's per year. It's not a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
So we were looking at 236 units, and we basically were just no, everything that they were saying is going to be very expensive. We were looking upwards of $1,500 for 2-bedroom. I can't remember the specifics. The plans have changed so much since then. Originally, they were also requesting $2 million in public subsidy from Met Council for to put in sidewalks and this and that. I was really happy and very proud to say that we got in the way of $2 million of their dollars that sent them back to the drawing board to figure out something else, where it's you're not going to come up in here and take our money and on top of it, use it in a way that's going to push us out from the benefit of this development. We won't even be able to live here. And you're using the money that's supposed to be dedicated for the people here. And we see a lot of that with development. We see a lot of it with affordable development. And so, that was one of those things where I was really proud to say we got in the way of $2 million of their dollars, which
good for y'all.
Yeah, that's what had them kind of pushed back for a whole year. And now they're resurfacing again saying, well, we don't need that money anymore. And so we don't know if it's that they found another investor or if that they changed their plans so much that they were able to reduce overall this $2 million. But anyways, this plan is moving forward. So now the thing is that the land itself is owned by the Wilder Foundation, which is another one of these big nonprofits, much like what Isabel was talking about, like United Way, like where are these big names? Why are y'all not on the ground? Wilder is another one of those big foundations. And Wilder was the owner of these 2 empty lots. There's usually big old piles of snow that's up there. We always say that because it's.
I can picture it exactly what you're saying. It's like a weird little area that doesn't, everything else is built up, and that's kind of just a little no man's land.
Yes, but it's land nonetheless, right? And I always encourage people to think about with real estate, you can knock a house down, it can burn or whatever. The land is what you're buying with real estate. The land is really where the value is. And so Wilder is selling to this private developer for profit. We don't know what those specific numbers are. They're not required to show us their purchase agreement, although we do feel like morally and according to their articles of incorporation, they really do owe us an explanation. They are a nonprofit, right? They are a nonprofit making so much money off of the mission of supposedly helping this community. And really, they have not been transparent at all. Community is not engaged in this process. And when we are, we're pushing and saying, don't do this. And there's a total disregard. So now we're here, we're seeing site plans, and this project is favorable to the city of St. Paul. You know, the city, man, the city has this kind of problem that's going on, much like most cities across the country, where we have like an influx of homeless encampments, people who are living outside in the freezing cold with no place to go. And we watch our elected officials like scratch their heads and say, oh my gosh, this is such a huge problem. We have no idea what to do about this, or we know we've done X, Y, and Z. But on the other hand, they are also the ones not putting in any type of policy or holding any type of standard to developers to make sure that they're not perpetuating this issue of displacement. And they are, you know, and they know these things because we bring it to them as advocates, you know?
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm rambling.
No, you're describing the situation very succinctly. I'm trying to hold myself back because you're like just hitting every bell where it's a familiar story, you know, but the way you're describing, do you got more to say?
Yeah, no, just, you know, that's basically where we're at. So we have the city saying, well, we don't know, but they want to see it done. Wilder, they want to see it done. And the developers, of course, they want to see it done. We really don't want to see it done. We want to see something that's going to be more creative, that's going to maybe lead to some creative ownership for the people who live there.
Yes.
And we also want to see some policy put into place. So this is where we're saying, this is where some action can come into place. So we want to see some policy and we want to see some creativity around what we've done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, you know, one of the policy pieces is as the city of St. Paul has redrafted time and time again housing plans that would address homelessness and it would address affordability. So I think I don't even know if we're at the 2040 plan anymore. I have no idea what plan we're at this point. They are not providing any kind of meat in the code or in the planning commission's ability to address affordability on projects, and not affordability according to the 16, county region.
Right.
It includes Edina and all these other places that I don't know anything about that skew our numbers, but really about what is the affordability in that area, or even just the city of St. Paul, right? Where we are primarily people of color. Frogtown and Summit U are the median income is around mid 30s to mid 40s, and you're going to try to put a luxury spot, like a luxury huge project that covers every inch of those 2 lots, leaves no room for green space, leaves no room for people to get through that complex to the backside, which is a community. There's a community back there. There's senior housing back there. So they're just wanting to build this and block everything else off and fill up every inch, and then saying, well, we have like 150 affordable units, or almost like, we have a whole bunch. But when they said that, we questioned them, and we finally found out that these units, one unit is 500 square feet.
Yeah.
$5,000.
It's a crime. It's everything about it, and the fact that the way they market those set aside units, that just means they get deeper subsidies. They're priced using the area median income, which means they're by definition not affordable for the majority of people who live in that neighborhood. And then they strip them down and they make them lofts, So it's like, no, that's not serving any of the working class families in our neighborhoods. I think it's disgusting that the Wilder Foundation is operating in this way, but I'm really not surprised, because what we have to understand is that foundations are capitalist class institutions. They're hoarded tax wealth that's there to entrench capitalist power, to manage their money, and to dominate public life. So while the Wilder Foundation is paying people making $100,000 to study the lives of homeless people, while they're hoarding land, and then they're going to flip some land and sell it to a market rate developer to gentrify the neighborhood, and then wring their hands every year about, oh, geez, we've seen more homeless people. And it's like, it's class warfare. That's what those foundations are, And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they allow for these developers, and all the players in this allow for developers to get away with language and a narrative that we're supposed to feel sorry for them.
Certainly.
I mean, one of the statements that we heard again, and I've heard this so many times through my work, is we're using only our own money. We're not using public money. And we're, out of the goodness of our heart, we've carved out affordable apartments. What are you freaking kidding?
Yeah. It's so offensive, and it's like, it really rests on, I think, like something you said earlier, Danielle, that resonated with me, was that the ruling class, the people who own big amounts of property and have real estate capital, they're meeting with the city perpetually over years. It's a revolving door between big real estate industry and the people who work in the city planning departments and the politicians. And they operate in that way. So when we're interjecting ourselves, we're really having to learn to cut through a lot of these language. They've been able to throw us off the scent. And what I recognize, though, and even talking with you, is it's so frustrating, but it's so affirming, because I've been tracking this Upper Harbor Terminal development for many years and experiencing a lot of the same learning moments y'all are experiencing, I think. And I guess what I'm understanding is that the more proactive we get, the more our expectations raise. And it's not just about a few affordable units. It's like that land needs to remain public. We need to talk about building high quality, creative, beautiful public housing. When you cut the private ownership and the profit motive out, you could provide beautiful housing for the people who are sleeping outside right now. And you could set up development plans that serve the working class mortgage holders and renters in the area. And it can be done. And I'm really thirsty for an organization or just more of these conversations, because we're having elections coming up in 2021 in Minneapolis. And a lot of times we talk about it still as the single issue, kind of, we need more affordability, I want to see a proactive vision for like really working class development. Like, what could we do in Frogtown and Midway that would build wealth for people? So I don't know. Y'all got me really inspired. That's my little response.
No, and this has been happening. I think St. Paul was asleep for a long time. It was like, okay, we're just going to have the tax base that we have. We're just going to like follow Minneapolis into its greatness and its growth. And then light rail happened. And when light rail happened, just the discussion of light rail, it brought all the yahoos into town and said, I remember when I started on the light rail project that I was working on that project in support of the small businesses. And I went to the old Lexington Library. It had just shut down as the Lexington Library right there in this intersection that we're talking about right now. And they had a model in the room. It took up the whole room. It had a bunch of tables, and here's this model of all of University Avenue, from the U of M campus all the way downtown. And this is where this model showed these high skyscrapers and everything being built like in the future. And then there was Frogtown, Summit U, like nothing, like no stops, no development, no nothing. And somebody was like really pissed off about it. And I said, you know what? Thank you, because we don't want you here. We don't want your buildings.
Yeah.
We don't want your skyscrapers. You don't want to develop here because you don't like us and you feel like we're dirty and we're poor and we're wretched or whatever. Fine, stay the hell away. And I hope you stay away forever. And it's not, and then, you know, so it's been many years now and they're not staying away now. Now they're coming.
Yeah.
They're coming and they're coming to Lexington. Do you know how close that is to Victoria and to Dale? It's frightening. It's starting to encroach and we're starting to kind of feel it. And it's not just the big developers, right? We got some crazy young people, young white people who are collecting land all along Selby and University Avenue and on the east side with all of their friends. And they're buying up property left and right, and they are dirty. They're dirty players.
Yeah.
We're learning more and more about them. So it's the big guys, it's the little guys. I mean, I don't know if there's enough of us to stop all of this, but I think the thing that, you know, like I said, we celebrated for like 2 minutes the other day on Friday was because 8 out of the 15, was it 15 planning commissioners voted no for the approval of this project.
That's pretty. Could you set the stage? Could you set the stage for that? Like talk about, because I seen that there was a vote on Friday. What was the vote on Friday? And that's impressive because in Minneapolis we have one council member who might vote no on something, but besides that, they pretty much have a consensus pro-capitalist development lock in city. You know, so to hear that there was 8 that voted no, that's cool. But what was this vote on Friday?
This vote was on the site plan. So this was from the Planning Commission, which is made up of volunteer community members, a lot of which who are already familiar with a lot of the work that we're doing. So like shout out to organizing work. I believe that wholeheartedly. So the thing is that there was a vote to approve or deny this site plan from the Planning Commission. And they actually laid that vote over. So now here's where things get to be interesting and the systemic BS comes into play. We won that vote. We got 8 out of 15 votes to say no to that site plan.
Right, I'm trying to do math in my head. Like, is that half? I'm like, right.
It's more
That's
than
more
half,
right? Yeah.
And it was by the advice of the city staff and the city attorney to lay this vote over for 2 weeks in order to create the appropriate legal language around why they are denying this.
What does that mean, lay this vote over?
So it means that they did not actually vote on Friday. It means that they're going to wait until they meet again and they're going to bring the issue up again. And then there will be another vote, which there might be a commissioner who was not there that day, who we know was voting the other way. And in addition to that, a brand new commissioner altogether.
Yeah. No, actually, we're going to get 3 new commissioners and we don't know who we're losing. So we're going up to like 19 commissioners, but we don't know with the vote, but they did vote no. The no vote happened. So when it did happen. The no vote did happen. What didn't happen was, so the no vote happened, everybody voted no, and then they needed to make a motion. Because the motion was to approve, right? So then the approval motion died 8-7. So then the next thing that they have to do, which I think is bullshit, is create a motion that stated that we are against this project for this reason. And that's where it got stuck. And that's where some of the commissioners and some of the staff were, one, obviously upset, confused, probably hit with a Mack truck, didn't realize this was happening, like the organizing around this was going to occur. And they started to kind of say things to the 8 that voted against the motion to approve, and things that were like almost threats, like If you are not following the rules and saying no to this for a legal basis, as we have, listed here, then you could be in trouble.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, they played us. They played us with that. So basically, the vote has to come up again with the appropriate language. I believe that that's right, yeah.
Okay, so
the no vote has to happen.
So now they have to prepare their own motion for a no.
Yeah.
So the vote won, y'all won the vote, but they pulled a technical maneuver in order to delay the real affirmation of that no vote and give them wiggle room. That is great organizing by y'all. That is infuriating, and it's so instructive for us, because when we put a lot of pressure on the Upper Harbor Terminal in 2018, what they did is delayed the vote, and then they threw a few crumbs at us. We're going to say racial equity in the plan now. You know what I'm saying? But we're still going to sell the land to the richest white people in the state. We're still going to have this music venue. We're going to create a committee, but the committee has to agree to the project before they can join it. So what we're recognizing is that's how much power the owning class has in these rooms. And they're going to fight hard, but we can challenge them. It's so encouraging to know that y'all even were able to, and that's such a learning moment, because then people seem shocked when they're like, wait, what we say just doesn't go? You know what I'm saying? Like you're breaking the rules. So, wow, that's I got to say, listeners, I'm not sure when we're going to drop this, but we got to tune into this. Whatever support you all need in terms of pressure on these commissioners or getting this vote, like that's the whole purpose of this, is like we got to turn out for y'all. And other people, just like I think it was said a couple times in this interview, as far as this truth telling that happened with COVID, as far as who's really on the ground, who's really about what, who's really out here. What I learned, and it was encouraging and humbling, is that there's a lot of people organizing. Like, I don't know everybody. I'm not the only one going through this type of shit or with ideas, So I'm sure there's projects like this all around the Twin Cities that are moving people. So it's y'all are really doing us a favor by sharing your story.
It's incredible. It's really, I think that it's important for people to run and put their name in the hat for planning commissions and zoning commissions and run for office, especially if you're, a person of color who lives here in the Twin Cities and these things matter to you. Like, put yourself out there and do it, because the thing is, this came down practically on race, this vote. This vote came down on racial lines. Almost all, except for one white planning commissioner, voted yes, we want this project, because they had reasons like, it's been 2 empty lots for the longest time. It's unsightly. At least somebody wants to do something. And that's,
oh my God.
Like, our community wants to do something. We have had organizations like Aurora St. Anthony Neighborhood Development Center put a bid on for that, try to buy that property.
Right.
And they, I guess their money wasn't good enough, because Wilder wants to make millions and millions and millions of dollars on this and make huge profit. So it wasn't that we were just sitting on our asses. We want development. We want good, equitable development. We want economic justice. We want environmental justice. But they make it sound like, well, you guys should be grateful that anybody wants to develop in your neighborhood.
And if you cause too much problems, they're gonna go away and you'll never get another opportunity again. Anybody who's against this just doesn't want good things to happen. What are you? Oh, you hate Black people because you don't want development. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, it goes to show, I think, how much too we need to build creative visions for the type of development that we want. But I hear all those same arguments all the time, and they're used as cudgels against people who are trying to fight for something better. Someone said something to me that was really affirming, talking about development and just saying, like, we want to be constructive, but in the situation that we have, our power is to disrupt a lot of times. And if we can even slow these processes down and disrupt and get people to pull their money out, that opens up a lot more space for us to build, So, yeah. You had something, Sarah?
Oh, I was just going to say that, when you look at the folks that were voting on this, right? A lot of them are community members. They're people that we've known for a long time. And they're making good statements saying, who is this affordable to, right? Or this property, this land has history. And what they're being told by the planning commission is, oh, that's not valid reason. Oh, that's not valid. Because you're talking about the breadcrumbs. You're talking about like, oh, you can't just put this through. You're not going to let us. So yeah, we organized, and those folks are trying to vote with their values, right?
Yeah.
Vote alongside their community members. But then they're being told, oh, you can't take this into account. You can't take this into account. And some of the stuff that they're not allowed to take into account are things that tie directly to race. And I think they kept saying you have to make sure it's a legal reason, a legal reason. And I think Naida Pressy is like, this is a legal reason. But you know, like they're pressuring it. It felt threatening. Like, and I will say too that as complicated as understanding what development looks like and how development works, and understanding how the city works, and then the planning commission, understand that it's hard enough. Then you try to go to the meeting, they switch the Zoom link, or you like, we literally could not get to it because there was a problem. These are my air quotes, a problem with Microsoft team meetings the day before. I'm sorry. Nope. I went online, I looked up what the Microsoft problems were for the day, and that wasn't one of them. But
Yeah.
like, and then they don't even notify it on the link on the page, and then they don't put their notes up in time. And basically all the community that was there, we were there on a phone call. Like, we couldn't see who was talking. Some of us were texting each other like, who's that? Who's saying this? I can't track what's happening if all I'm doing is listening. And we had a ton of community listening to that, a ton. And so that's powerful. But I just want to say, like, the barriers and the limited access is out of this world. And I mean, we knew it, but it's still happening.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've had that exact same experience with the Microsoft Teams. I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, the city is working with a billionaire developer, and the city's $1 billion enterprise, and you can't figure out a way to video conference into a public meeting. You know what I'm saying? And you're not allowed to speak in those meetings anyway. When they were in person, we would go and they'd sit you off on the side. You can't, they didn't even have space for public comment. So everything you're saying really resonates. It's been a really heartening conversation. Like, I really appreciate Matt for putting us together, and I just really respect you all and the work that you're doing, and appreciate you sharing it with us. Is there anything else as we kind of sign off that you want our listeners to make sure they know?
Tune into us on Facebook, social media platforms, websites. We're the Frogtown Neighborhood Association on Facebook, frogtownmn.org. We're going to try to keep everybody up to date with this kind of stuff, and we definitely will need to mobilize. So we definitely appreciate that. And thanks for letting us be here, Jake. Thanks to you too, Matt.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, you know, I wish that we had like, the good thing is that we have resources, right?
Yeah.
We have some financial resources that we could tap into, and we have each other, we have this network, and it's growing. But we really need more hands on deck. We need people to be much more engaged. We need you to find us on Facebook, because that's really all that we can offer right now. And we're building up email blasts, and hopefully we'll do something through text. But we want to show up on that corner and start to educate more people and find ways to get more and more individuals knowledgeable about what's happening.
Yeah.
So that, you know, we could really put the pressure on, because even if we get the no motion done correctly, the planning commission actually votes to approve that no motion, the developer can actually appeal. And that appeal process involves now the city council, as you know. So then the city council gets in. But at the other end, what Frogtown Neighborhood Association wants to do is have people really pressure Wilder and the board of Wilder, and do that as soon as possible. So we're trying to figure out, you know, what Wilder owes to these developers, because right now we believe it's a purchase agreement. It has not been completed. The sale has not been completed. So what is it going to take for Wilder? If we could pressure them, what legal action can Wilder actually take in changing the purchase agreement so that there's community benefits, or pulling it, right, without being sued.
And give up the land in about $100 billion while you're at it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that we need to talk about, but putting pressure on Wilder is like the number one thing right now. And then just, being of support to our BIPOC planning commission members who are going to, need all the love and support and protection that they can get.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for joining us. We were just talking with some powerful people from St. Paul, Midway Rise, Frogtown Neighborhood Association, the whole St. Paul. I got to say, I went to Hamlin. I grew up in Northeast Minneapolis, but I went to Hamlin, and I used to work at Maxfield Elementary. So I used to travel that little route. I got a lot of love for that area. Hell yeah. Well, cool. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Matt, for putting this together.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
Money, power, land, solidarity.
We need money, land, solidarity. If you funny, stand very far away from me. We have running plans about as far as